I'm sure we all have a list of just like, if there was another hour in the day, here's everything that I would do. Like creative ops is what unlocks that extra hour. Creative ops is what gets the busy work off of your plate so that you could focus on those big swings. Creative ops just gets shit done.
Let me just start by saying I hope you're ready for possibly the most unhinged episode of the Believe in Brand podcast. This episode is with my friend, Dmitry Shamis, the creative genius behind HubSpot, who now runs an agency called OhSnap. I grab him right in between those two stops after he left HubSpot and was consulting with companies on creative ops. But before he officially launched OhSnap, Dmitry focuses on creative ops. It's about creative systems underlying what makes creative work. And it's really engineered to allow anyone across the organization to be creative. And that's what he helps companies do, as well as build the creative itself. You'll hear his career trajectory, which is pretty amazing, and all the different ways that he feels creative can add to a company, not just the creative itself, but the system. So I'm really excited for you to learn from someone who gets it maybe more than anyone else I know. Without further ado, here's Dmitry Shamis. Let's go. All right, Dmitry Shamis, welcome to the Believe in Brand podcast. So happy to have you here. I feel like it's a bit of a long time coming, but we really only met a couple months ago at Exit 5 Drive. Welcome.
Hey, Ari, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I've been excited to see all the clips and listen to the episodes and feel honored to be here. Hopefully this is a good one and I don't let you down because you're awesome. And I've been a fan for forever.
I appreciate that. And I've been told by several people even before I met you, like, go follow his stuff. He's the man. Do you see what he did with HubSpot? He's the GOAT. So get him on your pod. And luckily I was able to meet you. We've been striking up a bit of a friendship and it's been awesome so far and can't wait for that to continue. But let's dive in. So first of all, I'd love to hear a bit of your background before we talk about what you're up to right now, which is something really interesting, a bit of a different angle than what is typically on this podcast. So how'd you get here?
Well, I walked downstairs from my bedroom into my office, sat down, and it was pretty easy, actually.
Yeah, no career journey is a straight line. You know what I mean? That's
a very good point. And wow, like to not even get a laugh from the host, that tells you everything about that joke. So, started a long time ago, as you might imagine, but really it came from like the point where my family, we moved to America when I was very young. We didn't have much money. We didn't have any connections. A lot of everything was just like figure it out and be curious and like go for it. And that's kind of been one of the driving forces behind like my life and my career really has been curiosity, like wanting to know how things work and needing to figure out how they work. Cause like at home, when something broke, we didn't call someone. We just fixed it. Like my dad and I figured out how to do it and like made a ton of mistakes and we got better over the years. And I kind of use that as this opportunity to always look forward and not be scared of things, but really just be motivated by like what's on the other side of the door. How do we find out? How do we figure it out? So I went to school to be a sports agent. Saw Jerry Maguire one too many times, probably. But somewhere along the way, I was at a Knicks game and like that's like the roof of Madison Square Garden right over my shoulder, if you could see. And I'm not watching what's on the court. I'm looking at signage. I'm looking at beverage providers. I'm seeing who's making the jerseys and like other merch. And like, this sucks. I don't want to be that guy. Like, I want to be at the game and I want to be able to enjoy it. And so I pivoted my career more from sports into entertainment and I became a talent agent. And it was like the whole kind of like traditional mailroom story to getting to a point where I was working with clients and I was working with some like really amazing, talented people. And like, this was well over a decade now, but I was working with Regis Philbin, I was working with Chef Emeril Lagasse, with Geraldo Rivera, with a bunch of like really well respected general like personalities, anchors, chefs, people of that nature. But I was in this unique position where it's something like I didn't make Regis's career. Like Regis didn't know I existed 99% of the time, nor should he. Like when he wanted to do something, he did it. But with a lot of the clients, what we were trying to figure out is like, what else is there? How else can we think about their brand? Where else can we get them? How do we get them in front of a wider audience? And so that became my job, just like really assessing kind of the marketplace, getting to know who they were, getting to know their story, getting to know their brand, helping them identify and build out their brand, and then using that to get to other touch points. And then, like most reasonable human beings, one day I decided I'm going to quit my job and learn how to code. And that was kind of the big transition point. And like, that wasn't a decision I just like made blindly or whatever. I was interviewing for other roles, and because of where I was actually interviewing more for like biz dev type roles than marketing. And, a common question that I would get is, can you communicate with engineers? Can you communicate with developers? And they were asking if I could have a general conversation. I used that as a moment to be like, well, I've always wanted to learn how to code. I've always been curious about it. So let's do it. And, I landed I went and did a dev program. Once out of it, I landed at a marketing agency, like an e-com agency in Manhattan. And I was working on brands like Rite Aid and Papyrus, Marc Ecko, like was launching another clothing line. Like it was really cool. It was interesting to see that side of it, because it was literally like that B2C, like we have stuff we want you to buy immediately kind of angle that I haven't personally experienced now in quite a while, being more B2B focused. But it was great. And then HubSpot happened, right? Like I was literally sitting in jury duty, got a message on LinkedIn from someone. It was one of those things where it's like, and I don't know how you've thought about it or approach it, but like in the past, like I didn't take LinkedIn seriously. And so I'm literally sitting in jury duty. So I was like, whatever, might as well, like, what else am I going to do? Let's respond to this. Legitimately 10 days later, I have a job offer, and, my fiance at the time and she's my wife now, just in case anyone's wondering. We had to move to Boston, and that's when things really kind of started taking off. I was a dev on the team. I ended up taking over the team because I was pushing to do more. I got there and it was like landing page for ebook, for webinar, for report, for whatever. I was like, hey, we could be doing so much more. And that's when a lot of what I'm doing now, a lot of what I'm thinking about really started, where it was like, all right, well, there's clearly a way to continue building landing pages because they were impactful to the business without having to actually be involved in the build of them, because it's like reusable components at the end of the day. So we built a system for the marketers to be able to go in and drag and drop and build their own landing pages. And that freed us up to start building all of these like web apps and tools and like rethinking the entire website. And as that was going on, I was building these great relationships with the marketing leaders, with the design leaders, with the video leaders. I helped build out our project management team. All of these things started kind of coming together. And in my mind, I was like, I see something where the sum of the parts, or like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? And there was an opportunity to take over the creative team, and I put my hat in the ring for that, and I guess it worked out. It was really cool because like all of a sudden we were thinking about, how do we not just scale dev, how do we scale creative as a whole? And it came from this notion of like, there's all this work that we want to be doing, all of this opportunity that seems to be out there for the taking that we just never have time for. And by kind of like outsourcing a lot of the work to the marketing team directly, we were able to free up time for like the more ambitious projects, the bigger swings, the brand projects, everything that we've been like really, really wanting to do, which is really cool. It was at that point where I started consulting on the side, and I really like it. I liked it a lot. I took to it. It gave me an opportunity to focus on other aspects of marketing and other parts of the world that I necessarily wasn't seeing every day, even though I was working for such a great company. I moved to another company after HubSpot called 7 Rooms, where I spent a little under a year there, did a ton of work, but like the consulting bug was calling. And just like looking at the calendar, just about a year ago is when the final jump into like full-time consultant life happened. And it's wild to actually think it's been that long now. It feels like yesterday.
It's amazing. And I'm curious. I mean, we could do the podcast on just that journey, because I think that's awesome. I would love to read the memoir. And what I'm curious about is, did consulting happen to you, or did you happen to consulting? Meaning, were people coming to you saying, hey, you're doing an awesome job at HubSpot. Can you help me solve this problem for us? Is that how it happened?
That's how it happened. Yeah. Not a bunch of inbound, but like it was some inbound here and there. And then eventually like I started reaching out to people on my own. But yeah, very much like the first time someone asked me for help, I was, me? Like, I think you messaged the wrong person, which was, it was cool. It was very exciting. And you want to be recognized for your work. You want people to see the value in what you're capable of doing and what you've brought to other places. So to receive that message was really, really exciting. And then to receive others was, it just kind of compounded. But that was, truth be told, like one of the like tricks in terms of consulting, where I was like, oh, you know what? This is great. Like, I'm not even telling people I'm doing this. I'm getting these DMs. It'll be easy to jump over. And, something I've like written about in the past is like this shift of like 5 hours to 40 hours. Because like, when you're doing it on the side and it's, a couple of hours a week, that's where the 5 hours comes from. It's not that big a deal. Like you could find people that need some help. You can help them as you are free and as you're available to. But then when you're ready to shift over to like 40 hours a week or more, all of a sudden you realize that 5-hour pipeline isn't big enough to fill that 40-hour pipeline. And then that took some learning and some adjustment for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's like that barrier I think that most people who go solo feel, where it's like, okay, now I'm on my own. Now I need to be the CEO and the CMO and the CFO. I need to make all those things work. I can't just do what I do well. I need to do all those things also and make sure my kids eat. And yeah, so, but getting to a year probably means you're on the other side to some extent of that. And that's pretty amazing. And I do want to get back to that. By no means is the journey over or smooth sailing. I'm sure there's lots still to figure out. But I'd love to get back to that. But really just to dive in now on what it is you do and are passionate about and are helping all sorts of companies do. And it's this term that I'm growing more and more curious about, which is creative ops, which I know has been around for some time, but I really learned more about it actually by following you. And could you just maybe go into what creative ops means to you and why that's become your passion, why this is the thing that you feel you need to be unlocking for all these companies that are not necessarily getting it on their own?
For me, creative ops is the mechanism for getting creative work done, which I know is a very vague definition, but in my mind, it's kind of just like that. Like you have an idea of I need to do something, or like I want to do something and I don't know how. Creative ops is what figures it out and routes you to the right place, whether it be through tools, through systems, through frameworks, through processes, through relationships. Like creative ops is the how creative work gets done, in my opinion. And, I have a friend and he's kind of like the creative ops guru, I think. His name is Nish Patel. He has a podcast. Sorry, I'm shouting out someone else's podcast and your podcast, but like he's got a podcast called the Creative Ops Podcast, which is excellent. And one of his favorite questions is like for all of his guests is, what is your definition of creative ops? So like however many episodes he has, like there are that many definitions of it, which is really cool. But yeah, I think about it as just like how you get work done ultimately. And like, I wouldn't call it a passion, which I think is really interesting, where it's like, how like, people do what makes them happy or whatever. But I always liken it to like my kind of foray and dive into creative ops. Like I think a lot about like rapper producers, and like stay
Like
with me
Rick
on this
Rubin?
one, where it's like, no. So not like Rick Rubin, but like, are you familiar with Run the Jewels over my shoulder here?
Sure.
It's so Killer Mike and LP. LP is a great rapper, but he's also a fantastic producer. And like his story is basically that, and like this is Tyler the Creator is like this. There are a number of people.
Timberland? Am I in the...
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Absolutely. So it's like they would rap, but then they wouldn't have the right beats that they needed or wanted to rap over. So essentially, like the beats weren't good enough. So they said, you know what, I'm going to go do it myself. And they became producers in addition to rappers. And that was kind of my thing with like creative work, where I had things that I wanted to achieve and like work that I wanted to do, websites I wanted to build, campaigns I wanted to create, videos I wanted to film. But I just didn't have the infrastructure or the tools or the system to do the work that I wanted to do. So I started figuring out how to get it done and how to get good at that. And that's where like the creative ops side really took off for me. And for me, why I still focus on it, why I still spend so much time on it, why I help businesses with it, is because I think creative ops is like the ultimate unlock for all of those projects that you want to do but can't get done. Like I'm sure we all have a list of just like, oh, if there was another hour in the day, here's everything that I would do. Like creative ops is what unlocks that extra hour. Creative ops is what gets the busy work off of your plate so that you could focus on those big swings. Creative ops just gets shit done.
That's awesome. And putting you on the spot, if I may, what does a typical client before getting their creative ops on look like and after? Like, is there a lack of structure or processes or communication or even manpower or all the above? What is the situation typically that shows up on your lap, and what does it look like when you consider, your work a success?
For sure. I mean, it's definitely all of the above, but I would focus specifically on processes and on communication, because things like tools and software and whatnot, those are usually used as a remedy for a symptom, essentially. You know what I mean? Like no one generally comes to me and is just like, oh, I can't build landing pages. It's, I don't know how to, it's like, I don't know how to move fast enough, and everything gets caught up in like approval hell, and we're always late to everything. And so it's like, oh, a solution to that problem might be a new CMS or, a change to your web infrastructure, right? You can, I can give the same example for design or video, but really what it comes down to is like, okay, so when I hear that, it's like, you don't have clarity around your decision-making. You don't have an intake process, probably. You don't have the right channels for communication or feedback. So everyone's kind of all over the place. And what I do is I help clients understand that and walk through what it takes to actually say, okay, we're going to fix this up. We're going to clean it up. We are going to, first things first, we're going to set up intake, because right now you're working on email requests, you're working on Slack requests, you're working on like someone tapped you on the shoulder in the office requests. There's no organization. So nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows how busy you are. And you're not able to prioritize the important tasks versus the less important tasks, let's say. Really, it's just busy work. But so you don't have that prioritization. So let's set up intake so you get organized. Well, that'll probably require a project management tool. Do you have an Asana or a Monday.com or a Jira or a ClickUp or whatever? You may want to look into that. And then we could automate the form into that so you have your tasks set up and whatnot, right? Like from there, you need to be able to assess what came in. Well, is this a good use of your time, or is this something that the marketer who requested it can actually do themselves? If it's something that they could do themselves, well, do they have the tools and the resources that they need to be successful? Or do you have the like freelance and outsourcing relationships that they need to outsource that with their budget? If it's something that you're going to take on, okay, cool. So then what happens? Who are you working with on this? Do you have a DAISY, right? Like I know we've talked about this before. Like, is there a driver for the project? Is there an approver? Who's consulted? Who's informed on this? Like, do you have a structured feedback process with that team so that it's clear what needs to get worked on and iterated on and what doesn't? Is there an overall process that you've explained to people in terms of, well, traditionally what this looks like is, well, we have intake, we're going to kick it off, we're going to have 2 rounds of feedback, and then we're going to launch it, right? Like hypothetically. Because there's also like another side of it where marketers tend to make requests that sometimes seem unreasonable for creatives and for brand marketers. And it doesn't come from a place of just like wanting to be a dick. It comes from a place of just not knowing, right? Like they don't know what it takes to make a post or a video. They've not done that before. So what to them might seem like a reasonable amount of time is actually an unreasonable amount of time. But if you were to just like put the framework in place of saying like, hey, we need 2 weeks to do this kind of project, guess what? That request is going to come in 2 weeks ahead of time next time instead of 1 week ahead of time. So, helping people that are involved with the projects understand. The point here is just like helping create that visibility around what the work needs to look like, what a healthy process looks like, what the communication channels are, and who needs to be involved and who doesn't need to be involved, frankly. And so when I think about success, it's about implementing the right processes and tools and systems that a client could then use and do this all on their own. Because like I'm a big believer in teaching people how to fish. Like I'm sure I could probably make more money if I figure out like a better retainer system for myself to kind of come in and make tweaks and whatever. But like, I don't know, like I'm setting up something right now where a client needs automations through Zapier. And it'd be 10 times quicker for me to just sit there and set it up myself. But I'd rather sit with them and show them what I'm doing and teach them how to do it so that next time they could actually do it on their own. And I think that ultimately develops a more kind of like a better sense of ownership within the client themselves and confidence in that they could do it themselves. And those things I think are, again, fingers crossed, hopefully bring me more referrals and business down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are a bunch of gems in there that I want to touch on. We're going to talk about self-serve branding in a minute because that was something I have on my list I got to pick your brain about. But something that caught my attention that you just said, a lot of what you described is really just being a good project manager in general, like just understanding the people, the project, the processes, the tools, the timelines. That's just smart project management. And to me, I was like kind of asking myself, like, isn't that just something that needs to happen everywhere? And what about it is creative ops? And it's something I'll throw to you in a second. But I do think you brought up kind of the thing that was on my mind about it, of why this is such an important topic when it comes to creative, which is creative is this own world. It's almost like an alternate dimension when it comes to businesses. Like, at least the way I see it, where everything else is, there's kind of a playbook, there's kind of we know how this works, we know how long things take, we know if it worked or didn't, right? Did the deal happen or not? Did we hit the deadline or did we miss the deadline? There isn't a whole lot of unknowns and other side of the brain stuff to think about. But then the minute there's this need to come up with a really cool, we want to really wow our customers, then the request gets sent off into the abyss and there's no understanding. Why is this going to take 2 weeks? I don't get it. I don't take 2 weeks on anything, right? Here's the brief. The brief is something cool and awesome that will get them really excited, right? And we all know this.
Make it pop.
Yeah, make it something that no one's ever seen before. And first of all, what the hell is that? Like, if I would ask anyone, any of you guys to do that, you wouldn't know what what to do. But it just becomes this world of unknowns upon unknowns for the rest of the team, even within marketing. And that's why specifically creating some really good alignment on the systems, the processes, who's involved, who isn't. Those things kill creative. And I do know that I've even, seen it myself inside my own team, which takes creative really seriously. There are some times that they're really frustrated that this video isn't done. And I'm like, we're doing a really serious video here. This is a project that had a 2-month timeline, just before we see the first draft. You have to understand that. And it's just part of, an indication of why this is such an important thing to get right inside your organization. So I think I'm answering the question for me. I don't know if you have more to add on, like, what makes the ops thing that you're doing specific to the creative arm of the business. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And yeah, there's a lot of project management that goes into it. And I think that helps with the timelines, that helps with the comms, that helps with like multiple stakeholders. But I think there's more to it as well in terms of like resource management and understanding what it actually takes to get the work done. So, right, like you say that video takes 2 weeks. Well, why does it take 2 weeks? Yeah, there's multiple feedback rounds, sure, but there's also research because you don't want to create the same video that your competitors has created. You want something different. You want something new that's never been done before. Well, your editors might be exploring some new 3D technology, or like they want to use Stable Diffusion or some sort of AI library, whatever, for video. You need time to explore that and make sure that you create something that's good, right? And so like I think a lot of it is like dealing with the unknown, but knowing the world in which it lives, which is creative. So that's where creative ops helps. And so like, part of it, I think back to that team that I had at HubSpot. So there were a couple of subgroups within creative ops as a whole. Project management was one of them. And that was who basically worked with the internal stakeholders and the internal teams to make work happen. Production was similar, but there was more focus on video and external relationships. Resource management was there to focus on, do we have the right people? Do we have the right relationships externally? Do we have the paperwork set up with the vendors and the POs and all those things, so it's nice and smooth and easy to get work done? And then there was a group called Creative Solutions, which was the self-serve arm, which I know we're going to get to. And they were the people focused solely on the enablement of the entire company to use the CMS and Canva and video tools and project management tools and things like that. And they were the ones who were constantly like iterating and providing feedback. So all of it is creative ops. All of it is grounded in the knowledge of what it takes to do creative work. Because like there's I think this misnomer, and I talk about this all the time, it drives me crazy. Like I think one of the worst takes in marketing is that everyone should be a project manager. And like, don't get me wrong, I think we're all adults. We should be able to handle our own shit. But at the same time, there's something to be said about managing something that's more complex and that has multiple layers and stakeholders and partners and steps and channels and strategies and all these things that you need a professional for. And that's where project management truly comes in. It's for those big cross-functional, like meaty projects that take 2 months, that no one is unclear about, that have multiple goals that they're trying to hit, right? You could argue maybe doesn't need to live within creative or doesn't need to support creative. But at the same time, having that group there and having them be peers to those other groups that I mentioned, I think is really impactful, because again, it's all set in that creative context. And it's not just, oh, we need, have you made that video yet? Because that's right. Like that's the question. But no, it's like, have you filmed it? Have you filmed it? Have you, have you edited it? Have you done the color correction? Have you done the mixing? Did you find the audio track? Like there's 8 million steps. And that's where like the creative part of creative ops understands those million steps. And it's not just, did you make a video?
Thanks for going deeper into that, because I do think there's this struggle or tension, because a lot of times the non-creators that rely on creative assets don't want to hear about the details. It's not important to them necessarily. And yet, because they don't know about it or didn't take the time to understand, their expectations are off about timing, about complexity, about what might go wrong, about why deciding yes or no now is essential, right? Those things, like, or why you're not part of the decision process until X step of the process, right? And it's really important, not just that they know, it's that they know why they need to know about the different steps, and that they feel just as invested in the process of creating the creative, even though they're not the creators, because it helps the whole project succeed.
The reason why it's both is because your process is also constantly like evolving and growing. So there's more education that needs to happen. And like one of the worst things I think you could do with any kind of process is essentially like deliver it like it's some gift and, expect everyone to just use it with unquestioningly. Like that never happens, right? You wish it would, but it never does. You deliver a process, someone breaks it on day one, because that's always what happens. You collect that feedback, you come back with a new version of it, and it works for a bit, someone breaks it, and you keep going. And processes, systems, tools, any of it are only as useful as the like end user who uses it. You could spend all the time and money in the world building something. If the team doesn't use it, doesn't accept it, then what was the point? So collecting feedback and learning from the users is incredibly important here. And that's where a lot of that iteration comes from. So like you build a process, you teach people how to use it, they break it, they tell you why they broke it or how they broke it. You use that to keep going. And like it's per usual, like everything in B2B marketing, it's another flywheel, I guess. But it's really important to call out that like the process needs to grow and it needs to evolve at every step.
Yeah, it's a very good call out, because I do know people start to rely on playbooks and on systems that they brought from, their 2 jobs ago, and it's like their Bible and they need to follow it. And that's just not how it works. It's just not smart. Everything's changing. Even just the same project, but different people already makes the variables different, stuff like that. So
Yes.
a great call out. So you mentioned teaching teams how to fish, right? The idea of creative, and I'll be honest, as the creator in my marketing team, I struggle with this. I do think creators often feel like they need their hands on anything with the word creative, that it should go through them, or it should start and or finish with them, something like that. And it's hard to let it go and hope that it still works out. And I probably need to talk to someone about it. Maybe you. We'll see. But ultimately, it's not a good way to do business to just have everything creative bottlenecked through the actual creative team. Ultimately, what these processes and what good ops does is it unlocks, like you said, the ability for creative to flow at scale inside of a company while maintaining a certain standard of quality, obviously. That's really the goal. And so I'd love for you to take me through, like, what is the process like of helping a company become a self-serving, creative team? And what does it do for them? Why do you say, like you described, helping someone fish, like helping them become self-serving creators is the best way to go?
It starts with where are their bottlenecks? Where are they running into struggles? More often than not, it's design. It'll be, a company will not have enough designers for their needs, but they don't necessarily have a stable outsourcing pool, or they don't have a good relationship with like a super side or someone like that. So they're kind of just struggling. And the marketers are angry, like they're understanding, but they're angry because they have to wait for their work to get done so they can actually go to market. The creatives and the designers in this particular example are angry because they're just burnt out and tired. So like a big part of it comes from just like identifying what the issue is and where you need to start. Because like I think a lot of people will look at any kind of like self-service system, and I talk about it across like multiple disciplines. You don't need to just roll out this like super behemoth system on day one. Just start somewhere to start freeing up time, and then move to the second phase, move to the third phase, move to the fourth phase, and so on. So like you identify the problems. In this case, it's design, and it's talking to the team and the stakeholders to find out why these issues are happening. What's the big problem? Diagnose the issue, and it'll be different, right, for everyone. But it'll come down to the same thing. It's bandwidth ultimately. Sometimes skill sets as well, but that's a different conversation. Unless, so it's like you don't have bandwidth, so you need to create a mechanism to free up the designers in-house to do more work or to do more meaningful work, because like everything ends up coming out kind of half-assed, right? Not because they're not good designers or they're not talented, but because they don't have enough time or space to actually focus on the task at hand. So it's like, all right, well, this is another set of paid ads. I'm just going to use the template from last time, or like the design kit that we created, and we're just going to update the text, and we're going to update the imagery and move on. And like those ads are probably going to be slightly less effective than they were the last time, because your audience will have seen a variation of it and not really like think that this was any. So you help identify those issues, and then you find where they do actually have playbooks, because like every company does have some sort of playbook, and that's good in this case because like they know it's like, oh well, to create this type of asset, first we have to like open up this Illustrator file, then we pull out this other thing that we had, this template, then we have these graphics that we overlay and whatnot. And then like when you talk them through, you're like, okay, so this is actually very recreatable. And they go, yeah, that's why we do it this way. And they're, oh, but it only takes 5 minutes. That's my favorite line, because it's like, it only takes 5 minutes. It's like, fine if you only have one of them. But people don't realize that they have dozens at any given time, and that 5 minutes turns into 5 hours in no time. And again, they've now been distracted and haven't done their big job. So by having these playbooks, now you're like, oh well, what if we recreated this in Canva for you? What if we use this to give the marketers the power to do it on their own? And by helping the marketers understand, one, that you're underwater, and two, that this type of task will take 2 weeks because it has to go through some sort of queue and it's deprioritized based on something else, but they could do it themselves in a half hour. Like, why wouldn't they want that?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of like selling the self-service system internally as well. But you use that, you create some templates, you get it out to the marketers and you let them cook. And that's like going back to what I was saying earlier about like iterating and learning. You see what works, what doesn't, where they mess it up, because someone's going to mess it up either because the template wasn't created the right way or because they found a way to get around some of the locks or something like that. But that gives you a learning opportunity to come back and say, oh, you know what? Actually, well, we created 5 templates and the team is using them and they love them. But now when we look at the social feed, everything looks exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So we know maybe we need another 5 templates that are similar in terms of what they do, but we need a different color background, or we need a slightly different layout. So it's an opportunity, again, to go back and iterate and learn and create the right assets that you need. So once you've done the discovery, once you've identified any kind of playbooks or repeatable opportunities that they're already doing and use that to create a system, you get your first win. And then from there, you move on to the next one, whether, maybe it's, all right, well, we have a big event coming and we are going to have 100 speakers at this thing. And now the designers have to create 5 different speaker assets for 100 speakers. That's 500 assets. It's going to take them, 2 weeks at a time. It's like, well, what if I could tell you could create it one time in Canva with 5 templates and then feed in a spreadsheet that had, name, title, image, and whatever other random nonsense you need. And it'll just spit out all 500 of those assets for you. No one's going to be like, that's a terrible idea. They're all going to be curious. So part of it is also, again, just like in identifying the problems and hearing what's going on, helping connect the dots between the solutions that, you know about, and like, frankly, the headaches that I've run into across my career. I think last time we spoke, I made a joke about pain. Like, a lot of this learning comes from just like running into headaches and frankly, just pain. But that's what helps the clients now. So you do it piece by piece, brick by brick, right? Like, I love Legos, as you know. And over time, you have this like badass like Millennium Falcon that costs like,
nice.
$800.
Do you see, by the way,
in Lego terms, not in here.
You see that new Pharrell movie?
I haven't seen the movie.
I don't think, is it out? I don't know if it's out, but the idea that he wanted to do a movie on him, but Lego, is hilarious and genius and perfectly Pharrell as the creator that he is.
Well, two things on that. One, Virginia Boy, which is him and Tyler, the Creator, is such a good song, and it's just off the soundtrack for that movie. And two, like, he made his own Lego set, which is amazing. It's a rocket, and like it's in the air basically. Like, it's not actually floating, right. But like there's like the rocket stream or whatever it's called, and it's like a rainbow. It looks really, really cool, and like to your point, it's just like very Pharrell.
Yeah,
very Pharrell.
That's awesome. So I do think, and it connects to what we were saying before about the education, or maybe it's more the word mindset for me. I think when there are creators and there are non-creators in an organization, which is, anyone who's not part of the creative team, because they are not creators, and some of them, for good reason, they're not creative people and that's not their strength. They simply turn off the notion in their head that they could go ahead and create anything. And even the notion that they could learn how to create something. Like, the tools are complicated. Have you ever seen Photoshop as a non-Photoshop? It's freaking intimidating, right? You just look at it, you're like, I don't know anything. Lasso? I don't know how to use a lasso, right? What are we talking about here? And so I think the tools are intimidating. The idea of coming up with something and the knowing how to make it, the idea of it getting it right. And I think 2 or 3 things happen. Either they don't try and make it and they ask you to do it. They try and they do it in Microsoft Word with, clip art, and they're like, this is what I know because that's what I did in grade school. Or they do it and they try and they get frustrated and end up kind of stopping the creative process because the learning curve was too much for them, right? And I think there can be a world where it's not just showing them templates and here, just drop the logo here and that's it, but even like, hey, the tools have gotten way more user-friendly. The processes of going from nothing to something is way easier than you think. You have an idea, you're probably only 3 to 5 steps away from having the thing that you could send. And it's really a mindset shift that, and there probably should be regular training for anyone. And I include sales because I think I deal with this a lot in Ireland where we're selling enterprise software to executives. They need things at a very, high standard. It's very important to them that what they send looks really sharp. That's a fundamental principle of our brand in general, but specifically when salespeople are reaching out to their prospects and going through that journey, and they want to be able to send things on the fly and make things on the fly, and they don't want to compromise, but they fundamentally, don't think of themselves as creatives, and it becomes this blocker of how fast can you get it to me? Or I just went ahead and sent, I just took the thing from last month and I put the logo on it, but it's of course the wrong logo and it's backwards or it's, too big or something like that. But I didn't know any better, so I just went ahead and sent it. And I think what if we just helped the salespeople say, hey, you're creators. We could all create stuff. And that's probably a good brand story pitch for Canva, which is really the why they exist. But I do think that's part of this story of just helping everyone feel like there is a creator in them, even if they're not that classic creator type of person.
I love that. I think you're spot on. And there's like two sides to it. One is like, something I tell people a lot is like, you should come to creative when you're ready to move slowly. Like if you need to move quickly, like working with the creative team is not for you. And I mean, part of that is, self-protection or self-defense in the sense that like, you don't want to get inundated with nonsense and you do want to work on the highest priority projects that are there. But also like you think about it from the outside looking in, all right, here's an intake form. Then we're going to have a kickoff, then there's going to be 48-hour review window. Then we're going to have a kickoff that everyone's too busy this week. So we're not scheduling it until next week. And then we're going to walk through the project, but then the next 2 sprints are full. So it's not going to get in until like 4 to 6 weeks from now. And within that time, if there are any delays, if anyone gets sick, if anyone has time off, like it gets pushed even further, like from the outside looking in, it's like a huge pain in the ass, right?
Yeah.
Whereas maybe you could just knock it out in a half hour or an hour in Canva and like game on, right? You're not waiting 2 months to do something. From the other side of it, it's like, you have to, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about, like creating the tools is easy, getting people to use them is hard. You have to teach them. And you can't just like, I think like a lot of people kind of default to like, oh, we're going to have an all hands meeting. And we're going to say, hey, we have a Canva instance now and you can go in and design. But like, that doesn't mean if I'm on the sales team, like, I don't care about that. I don't know how that's going to benefit me. So I think one of the big things with any kind of launch is doing an internal roadshow and meeting with the individual teams and helping them understand the specific value to them. So if you're going to sales, like the example that you're going to share with them is how to build a sales deck, is how you're going to reuse the existing slides and then add like a customized version of the prospect that they're pitching to into it in an easy way. And then all of a sudden it's going to click in and be like, oh, okay, that's what they mean by self-service. It is super fast. It is super easy. I could definitely do this. And I can see the value in terms of like how I can add context that I've picked up from like conversations or intake forms or lead forms rather, up until this point. But you've got to show people how to do it. And then that notion of like, I'm a creator comes from there. Like going back to the point on feedback, that's where you start hearing things where it's like, oh, you know what? Like I was using that template you created and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if, fill in the blank. And then you hear it and you're like, oh my God, that's so obvious. But you know what? I'm not a salesperson. I'm not the one that's doing the work. So I wouldn't have thought of that. In my mind, everyone knows what the brand is. Everyone knows what the logo is. Everyone knows all these things. But every single person that's utilizing these systems has a different touch point to the audience. So hearing from them and understanding, again, what their pain points are and what their needs are helps you come back. And now, again, they have that sense of ownership and they are creators because that suggestion that they made is now like very clear and obvious within whatever, slide deck template it might be, your design template, video template, CMS template, or CMS page, like it's all there for them. And you're fostering that creator that exists within them. There are going to be people that are against it from the jump. And, even if you do a roadshow, they might not be into it. But something I believe in very strongly is like, sometimes you just got to find your people. And like within, the sales org specifically, like there's always going to be those one or two like AEs or whomever that, they're just plugged in like, maybe I should be making videos. Maybe I should be making personalized content. Maybe I should be doing this.
And this was exactly what you were talking to me about when we chatted the other day, how if you're not going to sell everyone at the same time, and you're probably not, you find the creator at heart on that sales team and make them a case study, right? And go to them. And I plan on doing this right when I get back to work. I already know who it is because he was a creator in his last role before joining Island, and say, okay, what are the things that you typically send to your prospects on the journey, or feel like, ooh, I need to go make this because this came up, or they came up with this question, they asked for a one-pager. I don't know, any sort of instance where I felt like I needed to make something quick. And what if we went and made the most amazing version of that thing, like above and beyond what anyone was expecting to receive? And think about the impact that would have on that prospect of like, that wasn't just helpful, in answering my question, but that was an experience. Like, that was amazing. And what if we could do that in multiple points along the journey? Maybe that would actually take a month off the sales cycle, because they would just be like, I want to do this, right? These guys are legit. And then go sell that to the other salespeople and show them, hey, this is what we did here. That when you said that to me, a light bulb went off, and I'm like, ooh, I know what I'm doing when I get back from paternity leave.
That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. And I think like you will save time. And it's funny because that creator, that person that you have in mind, you're going to spend a few weeks with them and you're going to develop what they need, and they're going to fly. Like their numbers are going to go through the roof, and all of their teammates are going to, all of their direct like teammates are just going to be like, I want that. I want to be able to do that. And now all of a sudden you've gone from one promoter and a bunch of neutrals or detractors to everyone becoming a promoter because they all want to see that same level of success. And now you're going to have like evangelists within the team who are also like promoting it, or like, oh, have you tried this thing that Ari put together for us? Like, it's really cool, and it's made my life easier, and I'm seeing like higher response rates. I'm getting more meetings. I'm closing more deals, whatever it is. Like, it's a results-based business. We're in B2B, right? So like,
exactly.
Ultimately it will come down to, is it making money? And if it's making money, which it will, then everyone's going to want a piece of the action.
Yeah. And I think maybe to just like put a bow on this part of the conversation, really this is about, the self-serve and making creative something everyone can access and contribute to their own success, is really about translating creative to those in the organization that aren't creators at heart, so that they can see, first of all, them being an active part of that process, and also see the value in taking the time. And I think that's something often, like just holding the high standard. The reason why people, joke about brand police is because just, that standard is often the first thing to go once it starts to get hard or take a little longer than they realize. And it's like, let me just send the email. Like, God damn, I don't want to waste my time on, finding the right logo anymore. Like, forget this. So, but once people see like, no, there's something important that happens when I keep this high standard, or when I make sure the creative component of what I'm doing is top of mind. And when they see that, like we said with the case study, and when it translates into business value for them, and maybe that's the key, then this isn't just an art project anymore. Then this isn't just, brand serving brand. This is creative serving business. And I think that's the translation that ultimately this conversation is about.
Can you imagine how much money it would have cost to, like, there are, I want to say 30, 40,000 web pages on like the HubSpot domain, like across all 6 like international domains that a dev has never touched. They're making thousands of self-serve designs per month through Canva. At this point, like, I don't know about the video counts, but video editing is expensive. The team was actively saving, millions of dollars every year on outsourcing and headcount by doing this. Simultaneously, by creating all of these tools for everyone, we were going to market faster. We were getting in front of different audiences and, different personas in the right way. We were creating more personalized outreach for the right businesses. So we're saving money by doing all this, and then we're making money by going out further and wider and faster through all of these resources. So it's the biggest no-brainer, but yeah, you have to get people to understand that it's not an art project. You're not there to make things look pretty. Yes, you're there to make them look good. You're there to make sure there's consistency in the user journey because that's what builds trust. But ultimately, the goal is to make money for the business, and this is the way that people like us do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, I agree. So you said, going back to how we opened this conversation, that you ultimately went solo because you had the consulting bug, and just helping people solve these types of problems that we just spent the last greater part of an hour discussing, ultimately is why you're doing this full time. What has this journey been like, reflecting back on 1 year? What stood out to you as maybe the biggest challenges that you've overcame, or the things that surprised you the most about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's been interesting because there's been a lot of good and a lot of bad. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, that transition from 5 hours to 40 hours was a big, humbling moment where, I thought oh, you know what? Pipeline's just going to fill up on its own. It did not fill up on its own. Voiceover, it did not fill up on its own. It took a lot of work to start finding clients. And, it was one of those things where you have to put your ego to the side to, on the one hand, maybe you're working with clients and companies you don't necessarily get as excited about, but you need to put food on the table. Got to feed the kids, got to pay the mortgage, got to do all the things. On the other hand, you are also, going out to people, to people that you respect, and you're not necessarily begging for business. That's not what I want the takeaway from this to be. But all of a sudden it's hey, Ari, I'm doing this thing. Do you need any help? Or, do you know anyone that might need any help? So that is something I think is tricky for a lot of people. It was tricky for me for sure at the outset to just to ask the question. But if you don't ask, you don't get. So you've got to get comfortable with it. It's been cool working with different types of companies, size-wise, and within different industries or niches of B2B. Because I've gotten exposure to different business models. I've gotten exposure to different marketing teams, different strategies, different leaders. That's been really fun as well. And I've been able to also chip in other areas, which is while it's not always the intent, but to be able to say hey, your paid ads aren't working because of this, and be able to contribute back in a different kind of way has been really cool and really rewarding. Because one of the downsides to being at a company is that you do get typecast.
Sure.
So Dmitry's the brand guy, right? I've got plenty of marketing experience doing other things, but I will forever be known as the brand guy, regardless of even, if I go back full time and become a VP of marketing, CMO, whatever it is, it'll still be well, Dmitry is a CMO, but he came up through the brand side.
Right.
So, it's an opportunity to kind of flex some more muscles, which is one of the other things that I was not anticipating. And this has been interesting. It's incredibly lonely. When you're working with a team, you have people who have the same goals as you. You're moving forward together. You have people to bounce ideas off of and shoot the shit with, right? You have that camaraderie that comes from a joint win. But when you're here by yourself, you're by yourself. Yes, you have your clients that you're talking to. There are other people that you're talking to. But when push comes to shove and it's time to go heads down, you are heads down by yourself. And that has been a tricky thing to get used to, which is probably why I'm just nonstop, because I don't. I'm
here for you.
I don't always have someone to talk to. Thank you, Ari. I appreciate that. But all of this said, it's been awesome. I've gotten the freedom to do the work that I want to do. I have been able to expand in different kind of ways. One of the things that you hear about within within like marketing growth. Like we heard about it even at Drive, right? Was it Peter Mahoney? He was just like, don't become a CMO if you want to do marketing work. After a certain point, you do stop doing the work, and it is more delegation. It is more kind of just like facilitation, negotiation, all of those things. But it's not like I'm going to write this thing or I'm gonna get involved in a like on the ground sort of way. Whereas now, one, I don't have anyone else that's going to do the work, so I'm the one who has to. But because of it, it's also given me the opportunity to start the newsletter. It's given me the opportunity to start the podcast that hasn't launched yet. So if people hear this and they're like, what podcast? It's not out yet. But like, you know, those are things that not that I wouldn't have considered. They were things that I've always wanted to do, but never had the time or the kind of ability to prioritize. And now I do. So it's like really cool to be able to expand my own kind of skill set, but also like explore my passions, I guess, a bit more.
That's great. The thing I learned, and I'm hearing it for loud and clear from you, that I learned from starting the podcast is like, you never fully have control of, you know, especially as a creator. Like if you're in-house, and even if you're in an agency, maybe especially, you're serving other people's needs and ultimately other people's decisions, right? And you're just trying to follow through on what you're expected to deliver on someone else's vision. And, you know, I think, you know, for where I am with Island, so I was lucky enough to get in very early. You know, I named the company. I was there before we even, you know, exited stealth. I was building from scratch. And that was as close to kind of having quote unquote autonomy. And that was awesome. But ultimately I'm helping someone else build their thing. And I think what's cool, and you could probably, you know, you're building a podcast and you have the newsletter. It's like, it's yours. Like, wait, it's whatever I want it to be. And if I don't want to work on this, then I won't. And if I do, then I will. And if I like this client, then I'll take it. And if I don't, then I won't, you know. And that is probably incredibly fulfilling, assuming you achieve that, you know, 5 hours to 40 hours, because that's probably not fun. I imagine how is the next client going to show up if they don't exist yet? That's probably a hard thing to constantly live with, that people who get salaries, I guess, care less about, even though it's still a problem everywhere. Once you get that out of the way, it's probably incredibly rewarding to just build the thing that you've wanted to build. So, and it's been great to see from the outside, by the way. I don't read newsletters, but I read your newsletter. So people should read it. It's why we, you know, initially had a talk a couple weeks ago. So continued success there. Really love what you're building.
Thank you. Like it's you know, to bring it back to like a brand context, it's interesting because like I am the brand.
There you go.
Yes, I mean, I have a company name, but like the visual identity, I put it together. You know, not a designer. I think there's a ton of work that needs to happen, but like it's the colors I wanted to use. It's the vibe that I wanted. Like the newsletter is content that I care about and I'm passionate about and want to write about in that given moment, right? That feels relevant to me. The podcast, like, maybe I shouldn't say this before I release it or before, because I haven't recorded everything yet, but like it comes from a selfish place. You know, like I told you about the curiosity at the start.
Yeah.
Like the idea of the podcast, you know, it's about process and it's about talking to people about the thing that they're good at and walking through step by step how they do that thing. Like that legitimately comes from a place of like I spoke to Jess, right? Like to Jess Cook. So I think she is amazing at like content strategy. I think she's amazing at getting people to work together. So it was literally like, Jess, how do you do that? And if it was just a 40-minute conversation that the two of us had, I'd have been happy. But like I think it's really cool, and there's something interesting there in terms of just recording it and sharing it with the world to learn from as well. But I don't know that I could have done that kind of a thing if I was working full time somewhere, or if this was a podcast that I created for some other brand. The fact that it's Dmitry's podcast means that I can make it about whatever I want. That like I realize the privilege that exists within that statement, and I realize how fortunate it is that I can do that. At the same time, if clients don't come in, then I don't have time to do the podcast or write a
process.
newsletter because I'm driving Uber or whatever, Yeah.
I hear you. So this triggered something for me, and I think this might be the longest podcast that I have. You broke the record, but it's a good thing. It's because we're just enjoying. Okay, isn't it interesting that the less you are creating things with a specific business objective in mind, and more based on I love this stuff or I want to do it for me. And it also happens to be that I make money from it, and I can't ignore that, but that's not necessarily what's motivating me to do it this way. That tends to be what people gravitate towards and ultimately want to connect with you for. And that is the challenge that, as someone who works for a company, right, as many others do, right, who have business objectives and who see brand as no different than any other arm of the company that is driving business objectives. But the minute it gets too close to, are we selling something? Are people buying it yet? Are you getting people to give you their money with this? It all starts to go wrong. And the further away from that feeling or that mindset, specifically brand, can get, the more effective it ends up being. And like, you are the, what you described as like the extreme, in a good way, version of that, which is like, I literally left the business to do my own thing. And by doing my own thing in a specific way, not because it will get me more money, but because this is me. What I'm doing is revealing me, and people ultimately want to connect with me. And of course, I can't be dumb. I have to help them in some way, right? But if what I'm doing is a reflection of a genuine me, and I'm somewhat interesting, and I'm actually good at what I do, that's the sweet spot that businesses, specifically B2B, just tend to miss that point, or at least they're too afraid to let the leash go, to say like, that's really what you should be doing here, not getting us our next lead, because we'll do that other ways. But you, like, make us lovable, make us feel like someone you want to hang out with all the time. I don't even know what that means, because I'm a businessman, right? And but if you can do that, we're onto something. And I see you nodding your head, but like, this is really like the thing. Like, this is what gives people like me headaches, because if everyone just saw, like, that's what we're trying to do, we'll all be so much better at it. And yet I go to trade shows and it's everyone just like, here are my 3 greatest features, and here are my 3 benefits, and here's why you should buy this, and vomit, right? And that's why there is this podcast, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, that trade show example is, I think, perfect, because like, you're spending how much money to be there, right? And then you come in there with just the most generic messaging ever. Like, oh, we're easier to use, and we're faster, and you'll make more money. Like, I want the software that makes me poor, please. That's like, like, no shit. That's that obviously you do that. So do your competitors. And those 3 features that you have on your board, guess what? They do too. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, we've gotten to this point, I think, where, and this gets me in trouble with my like engineering buddies, but engineering has become much cheaper. It's become much easier. So like, whereas like back in the day, you can create this moat with a product, you can't do that anymore, because within a couple of months, any new feature that you have, if it's meaningful, your competitors will have it too. So what are you going to stand out on? It's got to be your brand. And I think that's where this kind of thing really comes into play, where it's like, okay, well, why is this different? Why is it special? It's like, well, because Ari's his own person, and he's got these beliefs, and he's got these ideas, and he's going to talk to people about things that, they're passionate about, and he's going to compare that against his thoughts. Like, Dmitry's a selfish human being who could prove that being dumb in a newsletter and podcast is actually a reasonable strategy, but wants to just legitimately learn from people about what they do well and how they got to that point, essentially. And like, I don't think when you're trying to sell security software, CRMs, hospitality, whatever it might be, like, it doesn't matter. Like, we default to like dumb marketing B2B brain. It kills me every time where it's like, and you know exactly where I'm going with this right now, but like this notion that like this business is a thing. We're selling to a business. No, you're selling to a bunch of people who work at the same place, who hopefully have aligned goals and are trying to win in the same kind of way. Yes, it'll take longer because there are more decision makers. Yes, it'll take longer because it's more expensive. But ultimately, it's just a bunch of people who don't want to look like assholes at the end of their day to their boss. And if you can appeal to them as human beings in a world where everything else is essentially the same, because right, like go-to-market strategies are the same, prices are the same, features are the same. Like if you could appeal to their humanity through your humor, through your vulnerability, through your just desire to do something different or interesting to yourself, like I promise you, you will find people that are aligned with you, and they will, when push comes to shove, right? Like when it's time to do business, when it's time to buy software, you're going to be top of mind because it's like, oh, you know what? I watched Ari and Dmitry just talk I watched them talk endlessly.
They're still talking.
But it was a great, they're still talking. But it was a great conversation, and it made me want to subscribe to the podcast, and it made me want to see more and hear more. And like all of a sudden now people are drawn to you. You've become a touch point for them. Yeah. You've become a human connection to this faceless business idea. And like, I promise you, they have faces as well. And they have likes and dislikes and emotions and feelings just like the rest of us. So like, this is the stuff that stands out. And I think like when you look at the brands that are doing really well right now within a B2B context, it's not the ones that are just like, oh, buy our 3 features and here's how we'll save you money. Like you should be saving them money. You should be making them more efficient. They should be faster. They should be doing all of these things. Like you don't need to put that on your sign anymore. Like that's a given. So what's not a given?
Yeah, it's so true. I think like one of the things that I feel is such a like weird backwards reality is like, unlike B2C products where you don't really have a close relationship with the product. It could be a drink and you drink it and it's done and it's over, right? Or it's clothes and you wear it a couple days, a month or a week, whatever. When you're buying a B2B software, it's a relationship. Like the customers or the admins or whoever, they're using it likely like every week, if not every day. It's what their job depends on, to like the decision to use your software, the reliability or the effectiveness of it. Like that's a relationship. That's not a transaction. You want, they're entering a relationship. Make them choose the right person and not just the right software, the right people that they're entering a relationship with. And in that sense, they need to feel like they're entering the right relationship. And there's a phrase that I just kind of started saying to myself out loud that because I'm trying to define the word brand, that it has no good definition, kind of like creative ops or the value of brand. Like what is brand doing? And the phrase that I started liking is the feeling that they know you.
Yeah.
Meaning it's not that they know you, and it's not just a feeling, it's a feeling that they know you. And because ultimately you're never making a decision based on absolute knowledge. Even if I knew it worked for some adjacent competitor or whatever, someone in my industry, I don't know if it'll work for me. And even if I read every white paper and every data sheet and got the full demo, I don't actually know if this is going to work. But if I feel that I know, then I'll probably choose you over the ones that I don't feel I know. And that's what you're trying to do by, like you said, that honesty, that vulnerability, that doing things because they're me and not because I'm going to get your money, at the end of the day. And it's just a mindset.
Hopefully you still do.
Yes. The money is an important part here, but the more it feels like it's coming from that place of like, I want you to know me before we do this, the more it actually works. Just do them, look it up. It works. So,
yeah. And brand associations are also really tough to break, right? Yeah. Like, so when you make that decision in your mind, when you've decided to go with a certain drink or clothing brand or, software, they have to really blow it for you to switch over. You know what I mean? Like if you drink Coca-Cola, like Coca-Cola has to mess up pretty bad for you to switch over to Pepsi, right? Like if you're, like I'm an Adidas guy, like for me to move over to Nike, like the world would have to end. You know what I mean? Like it would have to be something so dramatic at this point. And so like you create these connections with people, and if they're truly relationship based versus transactional, you've got so much leeway too. Like you've got room to make mistakes. You've got rooms to experiment. You've got rooms to play around. Like you don't have room to like blow it, but you can make mistakes and still be in the good graces of your audience.
For sure. So Dmitry, where should people find you? We mentioned the podcast, which will hopefully be out. I'm not going too fast myself, so I'm hoping this podcast will come out soon. But you have a podcast coming out. What's it called again?
I have a podcast called What's Your Process? Decided to self-edit for some reason. Yeah. And that takes time, but I'm doing my best with all of it. But I'm really excited. I've recorded a number of really, really great conversations at this point. Do I name drop or do I not name drop?
This is your platform right now.
My platform? Well, I spoke to the wonderful Jess Cook, who you know very well.
Big fan.
Had a great conversation with Bill Makaitis, with Ross Simmons, with Katie Penner, with Eddie Schlaner coming tomorrow. Speaking with Lachey Lewis, spoke with Tass Bober. Just like really, really great conversations. Like Natalie Kelly is scheduled on the international expansion. The topics are going to go far and wide, and literally, if you're curious about how these people do the thing that they're great at, like check it out, because it's going to be hopefully more of a checklist for people to follow and, adapt to their own businesses where possible. Additionally, I also have the newsletter. I've never been in like full on pitch mode like the way I am right now.
Do it, man.
Yeah. So the newsletter, it's called The Brief Creative. I send it every Saturday morning local time to me. So depending on where you are, it might be Friday night, or it might even be Sunday. I don't know, but it'll arrive at some point in the weekend, and it's really just like my musings and thoughts and explanations of different frameworks and ideas and how I've kind of approached the work over the many years of my career. It's been a lot of fun, and I've gotten some really, really strong praise from people like Ari. So please check it out. Yeah. And obviously the creative brand is the business, thecreativebrand.io, as we mentioned earlier. I'm just doing it, man. I'm going for it.
Yeah.
So if you're looking,
and don't forget the platinum selling LinkedIn post that just happened today. The 1 million impression post. Yeah. The guy knows
thing.
He cracked the algorithm. He broke it.
I set an annual goal for myself, because like this was also the first full year I've like really committed to LinkedIn. So like I want to get 1 million impressions by the end of the year. And I just did it like, in Happy Gilmore, when he hits the hole in one, he's like, I should do that more often. It's the same thing here where like, I got it in one post, and it's like, oh, I could have just done it the one time. What have I done it, 300 plus times now at this point for?
You'd be above my pay grade for this podcast. That's for sure.
Yeah. You're gonna I can't wait for you to have to edit this thing. This is gonna be fantastic.
That's why it's never gonna come out. I'm just gonna be stuck editing.
Yeah, it's gonna be December 2026.
Exactly. I'm gonna announce your podcast is coming out a year ago.
Yeah, it's gonna be perfect. No,
awesome.
It's been great.
This was fun. Yeah, let's call it here. We'll have to do a part 2 if we want to keep going. But thanks, Dmitry,
I think part 2 is already in this. Yeah, I think we've done 2 today.
Thanks for this awesome conversation. I can't wait for people to listen to this when this ever comes out. And keep doing your awesome work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Looking forward.
All right. Thank you so much. This is awesome. Thank you.